Hi, this is Rachel Cassidy with the Utah Division of Drinking Water. This short presentation is just on the requirement to take chlorine residuals and also how to report them to the Division of Drinking Water. So, distribution chlorine residuals. If your water system uses chlorine as a disinfectant or adds it in any way, shape, or form, then your distribution system is required to have trace levels of leftover or residual chlorine at all times. So you will hear us talk a lot about MRDLs. MRDL is the acronym that stands for Maximum Residual Disinfectant Level, and MRDLs are the chlorine residuals, these little residual readings that are required to be reported to the division every calendar quarter. Um, the rule itself looks like this. It's kind of long. What the rule says is that you need to have leftover chlorine. When you're adding chlorine to the distribution system, you shouldn't be getting residual readings at zero. You should have some sort of leftover or detectable chlorine residual in the distribution system. And the part that you really want to pay attention to, in addition to having a measurable residual, is that if your system is adding or purchasing chlorinated water, these residual checks have to be taken a minimum of 3 times every week by the operator or somebody who's been trained on how to get these residual readings. So the residual amount required at the entry point to the distribution system is 0.2 parts per million, which is the same as milligrams per liter. And this has to remain detectable throughout the distribution system. So when you're testing the far ends of the distribution system, you want to be detecting some level of chlorine residual. There is a maximum. The maximum is to never exceed 4.0 parts per million, which is also milligrams per liter. So you want to keep it in that green happy face range between 0.2, something that's detectable, to 4.0. So this requirement has to be fulfilled for systems that add chlorine or if you're purchasing chlorinated water. If you're confused as to if we have your system as part of this requirement, you can go check your inventory report on waterlink.utah.gov. So you have to submit and report every calendar quarter your monthly residual average and the minimum of 12 residuals. Now, if you take routine coliform samples and you're a chlorinating system or you purchase chlorinated water, then those coliform samples should have a chlorine residual along with them. You can count those residuals towards this total minimum of 12. But let's say you're a large system and you take 40 coliform samples per month and you've got 40 residuals from those coliform samples, you can use those residuals to fulfill this requirement. If you take 5 coliform routines per month, you can use those 5 numbers, but you've got to supplement. You need to take an extra 7 to get to the 12 residuals per month. And keep in mind, it should be 3 per week. In addition to these residuals, we're also looking for your quarterly operational data, which is the spreadsheet that you fill out when you check your treatment facility, where you're marking down how much water's been treated, the settings on the rotometer, the pump, or the number of tablets being used. So if we do not get the chlorine residuals for each month, and we check every 3 months, then it's 10 IPS points for each month that we don't receive the average residual. So some frequently asked questions: where should the residuals be taken from? Um, in the distribution system, of course, because they are distribution system residuals. At the entry point to the system, midpoint and far ends of the system, what you're trying to do with this data is really tell the story of the treatment process throughout your system. Who's allowed to take the chlorine residuals? It can be the certified operator, but it doesn't have to be. It can be anybody that's been trained on how to use the kit in the field. If you have questions about your chlorine residuals, you can contact Randy Ryan. Her email address is rryan@utah.gov, or you can talk to me. I'm Rachel Cassidy, and I'm at rcassidy@utah.gov. So we have a couple of different ways that you can submit this data. There's a new way and an old way, and I will take either one. The old way, we'll just go through this spreadsheet really quick. The old way is that if you're adding chlorine, your disinfection byproducts, which is what that DBP stands for, water systems were putting those on the old form, an old spreadsheet, and then they were including pages of residuals, pages and pages, and then the operational data, which is the spreadsheet the operator fills out when checking the treatment facility, volume of water treated, how much chemical was added. If you're purchasing chlorinated water, again, you're taking disinfection byproducts. Disinfection byproducts are only for community and non-transient, non-community systems, not for transient systems. So with that clarification, if you were purchasing chlorinated water and you were community or non-transit, non-community, you sent in the DBPs on the old form, including the residuals, but then no operational data is required because unless the system had an individual treatment plant, treatment facility. So the new way, you can have the laboratory send us your disinfection byproduct data. We don't need to have the water systems fill those numbers out on the form. In fact, we prefer to get that data electronically from the lab. And then we have an online form. I'll have to change this in the presentation and I'll show you here in a minute. The online link is actually mrdl.utah.gov, myrtle.utah.gov, and you can just submit these online every 3 months. And then the operational data, we do have a new form for that. That's just a one-page form. Try to condense it and make it a little bit easier for water system operators to use. So again, 10 IPS points for each month that we do not receive the residuals. So remember that 3 times per week, minimum of 12 residual readings for all public systems purchasing chlorinated water or adding chlorine. Myrtle.utah.gov is the best way to do it. I don't require it this way, but I do prefer it because if you submit them using myrtle.utah.gov, you are reducing the probability of getting a notice of violation because there's no human interaction and it's an immediate upload to our database. We don't need every single result. We just need the monthly average and the total number of samples that you took. They're due every calendar quarter, so these are the dates that we check them. This broadcast is being recorded in the beginning of July, so as soon as July 10th close of business hits, we are going to start checking for water systems that sampled and submitted their chlorine residuals between April 1 and June 30th. So we have about 10 days from the end of each quarter to collect the data. Now, you don't want to be submitting them every month. It's preferable, it's easier for you to submit them every quarter. And so just keep your information sheets, keep calculating your averages, and don't submit until after the end of the quarter. Wait until July 1st to submit the April 1st through June 30th data, and wait until October 1st to submit your July 1st through September 30th data. So all coliform samples and chlorinated or purchasing chlorinated water have to have a residual, and we can use those towards your total requirement. So this is what the form looks like. You just go to myrtle.utah.gov, type in your water system number, the quarter that you're reporting. This is the link on our website. If you go to drinkingwater.utah.gov, that's the link to use. Right there. Okay. You still have to send in quarterly operational reports. You can submit them over email to ddwreports@utah.gov, and those are also due every calendar quarter. And this is what the form looks like. It's on that link that I showed you in the previous slide. And you can pick if you're using chlorine gas or a hypochlorinator or tablets, and then you just fill out 1 page per month. And then every quarter you submit the 3 pages, 1 for each month per treatment facility. So in conclusion, if you're disinfecting with chlorine or you're using chlorine for any reason, your distribution system is required to have trace levels of this leftover or residual chlorine at all times. And it also applies to water system purchasing chlorinated water. You can report these quarterly residuals, the averages, at mrdl.utah.gov. Prefer this way, but you don't have to use the new way if you don't like it. Fair enough. You have to have a minimum of 12, 3 per week, or equal the number of total routine coliform samples that you're required to take. So contact Randy if you have any questions. She is at 801-536-4170 or rryan@utah.gov. And I'm just going to show you that online form really quick. Let me go to myrtle.utah.gov, and it looks like this. Here's a blank form. So I'm going to type in my email address. I'm going to type in my water system number. I'm going to use a fake system. I'm going to use reporting year is 2018. And I'm going to report for the second quarter because it's the beginning of July. I'm going to report for the second quarter of 2018. Then you just hit next. And let's say you took 13 residuals in April and the average was 0.2. That's all we need for April. For May, let's say you took 12 and the average is 0.3. That's all we need for May. Don't need every single number. And let's say in June you took 13 and the average was 0.2. That's all we need. That's it. And then you just type in your name, your email address, and then you certify yes and you hit submit. And as soon as you hit submit, you will receive an email. Save that email. That's your receipt that your data was submitted through the online form. So keep that and you should be covered. Now, if you go to your WaterLink report, here's my fake system. I'm going to pull up the inventory report really quick. So you just put in your system name or number in this drop down and it will automatically default to your inventory report. Scroll down, and if you have a treatment plant here with chlorine included as part of that treatment process, or maybe the only treatment process, and the status is active, then we are looking for those residuals. If you have a chlorination facility that is no longer active, yet we still show the status is active, that's a problem because you're going to get a notice of violation letter for failure to submit the residuals when in reality, we were just never notified that that treatment plant is not online. So keep us informed of when they go online and offline so we can keep that active. And then, or current, I mean. Sources, if you're purchasing chlorinated water, it will show up down here. It'll be listed as a consecutive connection under source type, and it'll be linked to a source distribution system, a water system that is adding chlorine. And if it's listed as active and it's a consecutive connection that we show has an active chlorination facility, then again, we'll be looking for those chlorine residuals. Now, if you go to your water monitoring schedule, just click on water monitoring and scroll down. In other distribution monitoring, this section right here, it will show the chlorine residual requirement will show up in this section here. So this is just a brief how-to on seeing if we have your system listed as required to do chlorine residuals. Keep in mind it's minimum 3 per week or equal to the number of total coliform routines you're required to take. Doesn't have to be done by a certified operator. Anybody can be trained to use the kits. And please contact Ryan, if you have any questions. 801-536-4170. Thanks.